Hello, everybody. Good morning, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Morning Bulletin here on the Blood Red Channel. I'm your host, Edward Kay. Joining me this morning is Jamie Findlater, and of course, we're going to spend the entire stream today talking about Liverpool's move for VfB Stuttgart midfielder Wataru Endo. And I think probably the first thing that stood out to me is the first thing we'll talk about this morning when we initially went for him last night. It sort of came out of nowhere the way we used to see in Liverpool do their business. But I mean, I think initially everyone was sort of fixated on his age. Obviously, he's 30. He is older than Fabinho, who you would anticipate he is coming in to replace, basically. Do you think it's a case of needs must, Jamie, at this point, after missing out on so many other targets?
Not sure about needs must. I think maybe, there's obviously only kind of 2 weeks to go until the window closes. So obviously they need to get a bit of a move on and get someone in. And I think Sunday's game against Chelsea did show that they are missing that number 6, that player, that defensive midfielder who will break up stuff for him. McAllister did a decent enough job on the ball, but off it, when Chelsea were in possession, you could see Chelsea getting a bit of joy, getting past him and getting at the defence. So I think it was important that Liverpool did get someone in quite quickly. The kind of issue with his age, and yeah, he is a year older than Fabinho, so it's clearly not going to be a signing for the future. It's not going to be one. It's not going to be a long-term thing. But at the same time, if he comes in as not the only signing, if he's one of two maybe midfield signings, if you get a younger player in, maybe a Decore or somebody like that, then it does make a bit of sense. And I think the thing with the sort of comparisons with Fabinho, saying he's a year older, what was the point in getting rid of Fabinho, that sort of thing? The problem is, looking at Fabinho last season, there were a lot of issues. He was declining, and it wasn't just a case of, he was maybe affected by stuff further up the pitch, midfield not clicking, the front three not pressing as they probably should. There were a lot of mistakes coming into his game. I think back to that game against Brighton when, let's face it, he should have been sent off for that horror tackle. There were mistakes coming into his game. Clearly, he wasn't the same player he has been over the last few years. And I think, to some extent, you almost kind of look at that season and think, well, maybe we have to cut our losses and just go for another player, even if it is someone who's slightly older, and hopefully it might be a bit of an improvement. And I think there's no doubt that, I'll confess, I don't know an awful lot about Endo, but hopefully he can be the player that Liverpool needs in that number 6 role for the time being. As I say, they need to get a younger player in there as well to go alongside him. But if they do manage that, then it could be quite a smart signing.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I have to confess I haven't seen much of him play, but I mean, after sort of the initial shock online last night of Liverpool going for a 30-year-old, and I think the initial shock of it being back to business as usual for Liverpool, really, and them coming out of nowhere for a player, and it's sort of being pretty much a done deal before anybody's really heard about it. But I mean, sort of after that initial shock, everything I've sort of seen on Twitter about him seems to be very positive. A lot of Bundesliga football experts saying Liverpool have got a really good player here. He's got some really good numbers. You look at I think it's since Bundesliga against Bundesliga midfielders since the start of the 2020-21 season, he's got the most possession won in the defensive third, most aerial duels won, most clearances, most headed clearances. He's got the second most touches, the second most passes completed. So I mean, does sort of these numbers and everything positive we've seen online, does that make you confident that he could be the number 6 Liverpool need, at least in the short term?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think like every other fan, I spent a good portion of last night just kind of reading up on him. And this morning as well, there's a piece on Sky Sports from Adam Bate, basically saying last season he ranks 6th for duels won in the Bundesliga, and then for the past 3 seasons, he's one of only 3 players to make 200 tackles and one of only 2 to win the ball back 400 times in the middle of the pitch. That, to me, describes perfectly what Liverpool needs at this moment in time. You look at, again, that Chelsea game with McAllister. You saw players running beyond him, and he kind of didn't pick up any players who kind of made their way into the box. Liverpool just needs somebody who is going to be there to break up the play. And I mean, you saw Chelsea kind of, getting the best of possession, which isn't the usual thing against Liverpool. We're so used to Liverpool just dominating possession pretty much every game. And it was a bit of a culture shock to see Liverpool, I guess, kind of second best for a good portion of the game after that initial half hour. So it's to me, from what I've read up on Endo, it does kind of describe perfectly that number 6 role that Liverpool does need, and somebody who is, going to actually break up play, isn't going to be, carried on a ball. I mean, I've seen a good few clips of him. He looks very composed on the ball as well. So that's a good sign. And considering, especially with the players they've got further forward, and, McAllister, who's also great on the ball, and Soboslai, who looked encouraging on Sunday as well. It hopefully, I mean, we don't know who else might come in. Hopefully, as I say, somebody like Decore, a younger player who there's a bit more room to work with and a bit more time to develop him. Hopefully, if you get Endo in alongside him, then you've kind of got that midfield complete for the season.
Yeah, I think another thing that's important to point out about Endo is his versatility. He can also play at centre back, so potentially, he's plugging 2 holes that fans have been crying out for us to fill in this transfer market. But I think you probably expect us to still be in the market for another centre back, though, wouldn't you? Especially, I mean, you look at his height. I mean, everybody's sort of touting around that, Lautaro Martinez was too small to play centre back in the Premier League. I think Endo is only around 5'8". So would you expect us to still sort of be in the market for another defender?
Definitely, yeah. I think Endo, he can play centre back, but I think, well, especially with the time being, Liverpool needs a defensive midfielder more than anything. So he's going to play there, maybe not this weekend against Bournemouth because it's maybe a bit too soon. Might see him come off the bench, perhaps, but I can't see him starting personally. But for the at least next couple of games after that, I'd expect to see him come into the side as the defensive midfielder. Beyond that, if they do manage to get another player in, a younger player, as we've discussed, then hopefully that other player maybe develops and we see either him come in and Endo as backup, or the 2 perhaps just interchanging as and when. Beyond that, I wouldn't have any major issue with Endo perhaps playing centre back, but I think Liverpool do need a proper out and out centre back to go. I mean, the one advantage he has got is he's left footed, so that does kind of play into this idea that obviously at the moment Robertson perhaps doesn't look quite suited to this new system, and maybe having Endo would help. But at the same time, I think you're almost missing out on what Endo's best at if you don't play him in that defensive midfield role and have him breaking up play, having him starting things up for Liverpool. I'd say I've seen clips of him, he looks very comfortable on the ball, and it would be a shame if he was kind of, situated in the back 3, if you like, and not getting a chance to show that. So I think Liverpool do need to get a new centre-back in, and I mean, the thing is as well, they need a centre-back who's going to eventually take over from Van Dijk, hopefully. And having a 30-year-old obviously isn't going to be that option. So they do need to get a younger option in, yeah.
Yeah, spot on. I think we will still be in the market for a proper centre-back. But we've spoken about his good numbers, his versatility, but another string to his bow is his resilience. So according to Transfer Market, he's only missed 2 games through injury since the start of the 2019-2020 season. I mean, I think resilience is such an undervalued asset now, especially as we see, we've seen Liverpool struggle with injury issues over the past few seasons, and now we're seeing plenty of players around the Premier League being kept out with significant injuries really early into the season. You look at Timber and Kunku, Fofana, De Bruyne. So yeah, do you think sort of his resilience is another reason the Reds have decided to go for him?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, especially after last few years of having, Naby Keita and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain were, 2 players who were expected to kind of galvanise the midfield, almost change the way Liverpool playing a bit, but you just couldn't get them on the pitch. And that's the crying shame with, the likes of Keita, who Liverpool lost, did spend a good amount of money on, hopefully become that, midfield star for them, and it just never worked out really. So, yeah, having a player in who, I think, as you said, he's only missed 2 games over the last, however long. So clearly, he's a reliable player. You can expect to see him on the pitch most weeks. Touch wood. Hopefully, he doesn't fall the same way as some of the other, new signings we've seen so far this season from other teams, and hopefully he gets a good start.
Yeah, do you think there's something to be said as well for a lot of the reporting last night stating that the player sort of went to Stuttgart and said, look, this is an absolute dream move for me. He's spoken in the past about still wanting to play in England. Do you think there's something to be said for, would you rather have a 30-year-old guy that actually wants to play for Liverpool rather than, a 21-year-old in Caicedo who might be much higher rated, but he wants to live in London and play for Chelsea rather than come to Anfield?
Definitely. Jurgen Klopp's always made a big thing about saying, if a player doesn't want to be here, he can go, that sort of thing. So the whole Caicedo situation, once it became clear that he told Chelsea that he only wanted to go there, he didn't want to go to Liverpool. It rubbed me up the wrong way. And having a player who is keen to, come to the Premier League, clearly last night, you get your usual plane watchers looking at when his flight might land, that sort of thing. So clearly it's developed quickly. He's clearly keen to come to the club, hopefully. Fingers crossed, there's no hijacking of the deal or anything like that. So, but we'll hopefully get the player in. And the problem with Caicedo as well is that he has talked about going to Real Madrid previously. So, and he's a young player. So there's every chance he could end up playing for Real Madrid in the future. So it's a question of, if you did end up getting Caicedo, how long would you actually have him for? If he's 21 now, if he has a good maybe 2 or 3 seasons, Real Madrid are going to be looking at him straight away. And in that case, was it really worth, the 100 million odd quid that Liverpool would have had to spend on him just to get 3 years out of him, when you're probably going to get the same amount of time out of Endo for a lot less, getting him for basically 100 million less. So from that point of view, I think, yeah, I'm hesitant to say it's a much better signing, because I don't know enough about Endo to say for the fact that he is a better player or anything like that. But for the kind of time that you're probably going to get out of him and the time that Chelsea might get out of Caicedo, I see it as maybe a smarter deal for the time being, especially if Liverpool do get that younger signing to go along with him.
Yeah, I think it's being reported around 19 million euros for Endo, which I think is around 16 and a bit million quid. It's not too bad. But looking ahead to what Liverpool might do with the rest of this hypothetical 110 million pounds that they were going to spend on Caicedo, going for a 30-year-old in Endo, you've got to assume that probably rules out a move for an Amrabat or a Palhinha, who, Palhinha almost certainly would have cost a lot more because obviously he's Premier League proven, and they're both the wrong side of 26. You mentioned Decore already. Do you think Liverpool will now be looking to bring in a younger option for the same position?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think at the very least, they definitely need another midfielder to go alongside him, whether they go for an out-and-out number 6 or whether they, there's kind of reports of Gravenberch being looked at again. But for my money, I think I would go for Decore over Gravenberch, just to have that kind of that backup, or maybe that first choice in the number 6 position, and having someone who can, battle with Endo to kind of play this season and hopefully become the long-term option there. So yeah, out of all the options, I think Decore looks to be the kind of standout at the moment. No one saw Endo coming, so George Schmacker might have something up his sleeve that we don't even know about at this moment in time, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, as you say, it's back to sort of being sort of in the dark, really, as a Liverpool fan. But I mean, I've got to be honest, I much prefer that than all the carrying on we've seen in the media over Caicedo and Lavia in the last few days. So yeah, it remains to be seen what Liverpool do with the rest of this money. No doubt there should be plenty more spent on a new centre mid and hopefully another centre back as well. But we'll bring you news of that as and when we have it here on the Blood Red channel. But for now, that's all we've got time for on this morning's morning bulletin. So Jamie, thanks for joining me, and we'll catch you next time.